We're justice consultants. We work with state agencies on helping them understand how they can better meet the needs of people who are unhoused.
We have to bring the human back into the human services. Don't just build a community advisory board, but actually step out of the way.
And that's what I'm seeing happening here in Hennepin County.
I'm on a lot of interviewing committees, so I interview people that are going to be hired in housing stability. They understand we give them a perspective that they can't have because they haven't had the experience.
Are you guys compensated for your time?
Yes, we are. Indigenous and Native people, when we are at the table rather than on the menu, we change the dynamic of every single thing that's going on. We offer a different type of vocabulary, a different type of seeing and experiencing.
It really works. This isn't like, some window dressing. This really works. And so if you want something that really works, this is what you need to do.
Rico Morales and Dee Martineau are in the Hennepin County documentary. I'll put a link in the description. But Rico and Dee's interview was so good, our producer Alex cut it into a podcast. We talk about lived experience. They both share their powerful journey from homelessness to housing. We talk about housing presents all kinds of new challenges. We talk about indigenous homelessness. We talk about, so much. This is a great podcast. I know you'll love it.
Can you briefly tell me your story? My story, briefly. Okay. Minnesota resident all my life, born and raised here. Families from southern Texas, Mexico, 100% indigenous and native to this continent. Born into generational poverty and homelessness. Always a renter, never an owner. Most of my life, I've been under probation or parole of some sort. I was an addict for more than 30 years, a chronic addict, homeless, personally, individually, as an adult, as a child. And 1991, I graduated from high school. I moved up to Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I just have a passion for Minnesota. I do love Minnesota, and I enjoy working and living in Hennepin County. But I was drug addicted for 30 years and criminal behavior and sleeping outside, eating out of garbage cans, overdosing twice.
Sober now.
Sober now, more than 13 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's made a difference. I mean, without sobriety, I don't think I would want to be housed. I don't think I would want to be in permanent supportive housing. Ever since 2012, I'm in permanent supportive housing in Hennepin County through a nonprofit organization, and it was a life changer. Being sober and being in my own house, it took me a week, maybe more, to realize I could take a shower, that I could buy food and put it in a grocery, put the groceries away, and not have to eat every single thing I own that day, because I didn't know if it was going to be there tomorrow, or if I didn't have a place to store it, or I didn't have a place to take a shower. All of a sudden I have to learn again the basic necessities of hygiene and personal living and human interactions and interpersonal communication and how to get along with people.
The whole new life.
Yeah, it's a whole new life.
That's what a lot of people don't understand, is that once somebody goes into housing, it's a whole set of new challenges.
And you have to learn to unlearn and learn again. You have to do so much metacognating. People don't even understand what metacognate means. You have to.
I don't know. What does that mean?
You have to think about what you're thinking about, and so we have to learn how to change a tire while we're driving the vehicle at the same time. So it's trauma, it's triggering, it's frustrating, it's wonderful, it's challenging. And someone with brain injuries or handicap issues might have even more on top of double.
Briefly tell me your story.
Well, I first became homeless, I guess, as a result of domestic violence.
Are you safe now?
Yes, of course. I left home in my mid-teens. I was 15 years old. I left home. I was being raped, tortured, starved, mutilated with knives, and I just left home. And I ended up moving in with my boyfriend's parents. And, not a week goes by that I don't realize that they saved my life. And they really did save my life by allowing me to live with them. So that was my first experience of homelessness, was as a child. As an adult, I've had 4 episodes of homelessness. I just came off of one about a year and a half ago, and I you know, validate what Rico's saying. I feel like I'm just barely sort of getting back to normal again. I'm just barely kind of, getting all the wheels spinning at one time. And I've become homeless 4 times now because I have a very severe mold allergy and allergy induced asthma. And so if I have exposure to mold, I just melt. I can't breathe. A lot of things happened. So the other 4 times as an adult I've become homeless have been because of my allergy induced asthma.
We could do so much on that because I meet so many people who have to leave their apartments because of mold.
Yep.
And it's not even talked about.
Yep. And it's very difficult. I mean, I've not been able to, I lift myself up. I have a 5-0 suing landlords, but you can't really sue them for mold, but at least you can get out of your lease. But that's what increases the homelessness. Last time it took me about 2 or 3 months to get out of my lease. And so I had to just sort of hang out until that happened. And yeah, so it's kind of a combination of first-time domestic abuse and these last few times. And I'm still under treatment for mold exposure. It's been a year and a half, and I'm still take medicine on a daily basis.
So I started what I do, which is empowering homeless people to share their own story back in 2008, which was, I got all kinds of pushback because the homeless sector, for the most part, just wants to share success stories, formerly homeless people. They didn't, want to basically hear of people that were still outside. But I saw the importance of 2 things. The public didn't have a connection to homeless people, and many of the people who are in leadership making decisions about homeless people had zero connection. And now, fast forward a bunch of years, lived experience is now the sexy thing, right? There's sessions and webinars and conferences, but just about everybody forms a committee, and it's mostly tokenism. I know of one other place, I'm sure there's more, but I only know of one other place besides what I've heard about you guys today that actually empowers the lived experience committee to make decisions. So just to give you a brief recap, we was out with outreach, right? And the case managers, and they said, you guys designed their shirts, you guys design what they do. We were in shelters, and they said, you guys, the lived experience committee, you guys designed what we do. You design programs. You had your hands on everything. We're with the housing people. They said, the lived experience committee. And I said, well, I got to talk to the lived experience committee. So here we are. So how did this happen that you guys are empowered to make decisions? Because everybody else, they get a lived experience committee, they meet once a month, and nothing changes. You know what I'm talking about?
I do, and having myself and Dee as indigenous and native and cross-cultural people, we bring a different type of lens and experience and life, the actuarial of being lived experience with indigenous and native people. When we are at the table rather than on the menu, we change the dynamic of every single thing that's going on, because I and myself and Dee and other people, we offer a different type of vocabulary, a different type of seeing and experiencing.
Do you have a product or a service and you're looking to market to nonprofit decision makers? Well, look no further. This spot could be yours. Email podcast@invisiblepeople.tv for sponsorship opportunities.
We offer a different type of vocabulary, a different type of seeing and experiencing. For years and years in Hennepin County, I told people we have to stop calling them homeless people. We have to start seeing them as our brothers and sisters living outside or seeking shelter or seeking services. These are our family members, our neighbors. These are our neighbors living outside. I said, you got to repersonalize the system, the human services. We have to bring the human back into the human services. I just kept pounding on that. I kept talking about making things more relational rather than transactional. Don't just build a DEI committee. Don't just build a community advisory board, but actually step out of the way.
Well, that's key.
Yeah.
Because I was just going to say, you got them to listen because you're saying all this, and it sounds like you're pretty relentless about it.
Yeah.
And I think you're a person that makes stuff happen. But in other communities, the people in charge aren't listening, but you got them to listen.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. And for me, it's sort of like you just, I think if I'm on a lot of interviewing committees, so I interview people that are going to be hired in housing stability. And the thing I say over and over again, too many words. Like this person uses too many words. If you're dealing with someone that's on the street, they don't need the whole story. They don't need the whole picture. They need like 1 or 2 sentences that has an action item at the end of it. It's like, too many words. And I think you only have that perspective if you've lived that experience. Because I think to everybody else, they'd seem blind, you know what I mean? And I just keep saying, too many words.
You brought up a great point because from what I heard today, you guys are involved on the hiring process. I've only seen that in the UK, where when they hire people in the UK, they have somebody from lived experience sit in the interview. And if the person is uncomfortable because there's somebody with lived experience there, right? In the UK, they call them rough sleepers.
When we're in these committees, when we're in these meetings, is that I will actually say, stop, please, can you give me the definition of that that word that you just used, or that, what do they call the acronyms? Yeah, I can't even think of the word for the acronyms. So I had stopped people and I asked people, say, okay, we're going to have to slow down a little bit. We're all going to have to take a breath because I don't know the agency speak. I don't know the high-level $10 words that you're using. I barely graduated from high school, and so I need the catching up that we had to do. And I'm making it very evident that you are going to have to be patient with us. You're going to have to get out of our way, and you're going to have to help us get to a certain point. So that's kind of what I do, and I know I am.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the things that I've really pushed is that 87, well, at least in Minnesota, 87% of the people that are homeless have disabilities. And so I pushed why is disability not a huge part of this conversation? Why do we talk about FIPOC? We talk about different things, but we don't talk about disability. And kind of the marrying of the services from Hennepin County for people with disabilities with the population of people that are unhoused, because you can't stay in your housing if you don't have the support for that disability. You can house people, but you can't keep them in their housing if they don't have the support for that. And the other thing I feel like I really call out a lot, you're great at calling out stuff, Rico, but the thing I call out a lot when I'm in the RFP committees is like, you're reading these people and it's like, okay, so 40% of the people they serve are people of color, but 67% of the homeless population in this state or county are people of color. So why do we have 67% people of color, but you're only serving 40% of the people that you serve are people of color? And it's really amazing. Like sometimes I have to repeat myself 2 or 3 times. They just kind of go, oh, okay, yeah. And then, they go on and like, no, again, I'm going to tell you like this, there's something wrong. You have to talk to these people. There's something wrong with this.
So you know how HUD mandates that continuum of care has to have 2 lived experience people, right?
And the one in hand.
Right. And it depends. And I'm sure there's some great ones. I was one of the 2 in a city I won't name. And they were talking, we have a new data point that 50% of the people we house leave in 6 months. And they're all celebrating because they got data. Because they're so data driven, like you say, got to be human center, right? So I raised my hand and I say, 50% of the people leaving in 6 months is not good. Is not good. Well, about another week, I was out of that meeting, right? It was just tokenism. They had lived experience just to meet the HUD requirement, they weren't really listening to us.
Yeah, and I can't say that I feel that way where I've been in Hennepin County. 'Cause
No, they're listening to you.
I'm on the COC and I feel listened to, and I feel like sometimes I have to repeat myself once or twice. But if I do that, I get hurt. So I can honestly say that I do feel that there is an interest and a willingness, and I think that people understand. At least I feel like the people that I work with here understand the value of what we do. They understand the value. They understand we give them a perspective that they can't have because they haven't had the experience.
They want to help. They want to
the values.
I also want to say that
If you made it this far, that means you love this podcast and we love you. Please take a moment and write a review. Hit that 5-star thingy. And if you would like to suggest a topic or a guest or just say hello, email us at podcast@invisiblepeople.tv.
I also want to say that lift up the staff, the employees of Hennepin County, county commissioners who were in the homeless shelter with me, and there's now a county commissioner. That person still brags about me to this day, 15 years later. I met Rico when he was in the homeless shelter, and now she's a county commissioner. And that's great, and that's wonderful. But the courage of Hennepin County and city of Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota to lift us up, to help us come up, and to let us stay in our seats of power and authority and use our voice, and the courage of the employees and the staff to say, you know what, I'm going to allow this Rico or this person, the D, to help confront in a good way, in a kind way, to have these courageous conversations where I am telling people and asking people to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's the world has changed. Right. The world has changed.
One of the hardest things to really talk about is the issue of race. Like we just had a meeting yesterday about the Heading Home Hennepin. It's this HUD mandated meeting that we have to have once a year based on the COC. And, and I said, yeah, I went last year for the first time. And when you walked into the auditorium, 67% of people who are homeless are people of color. There was seriously, maybe 5% people of color at most. And I said, in the meeting, I said, we have to change this. If we want to really do this time, we have to reach out to all these culturally specific organizations, all these organizations that are really focused on people of color. And we need to bring them into this conversation and not have this be the same old, And so, but I think it's hard to talk about race. I just think it's harder than a lot of other.
It's an important conversation.
But it's an important conversation because you're saying, because it's not like I'm talking about you specifically because you're white. It's just I'm talking about the composition, doesn't represent the people that we're serving.
Yeah. And you said, both of you guys, gosh, I got so much things that going on in my head. But when the movement of lived experience started taking off about 5 years ago, and everybody's like, we got to listen to lived experience people. I said, nobody's not going to say anything new that they haven't been saying for 10, 20 years, right? Shelters suck. We need dignity. Get us in housing, get us support. We've been saying that forever. What we need to do is empower people with lived experience in a way that they're actually making decisions, that they're not just the people that we're supposed to listen to, but the people that are helping us change and take actions. And that's what I'm seeing happening here in Hennepin County.
Hennepin County has done a great job. They could do a lot better, as with everyone and everything, but they've done a great job in the process of ending chronic homelessness. Now, what that means and how that's defined through the data points and chronic homelessness versus unsheltered versus regular homelessness. So there's, we can keep going, like I said, for hours talking about this situation and that situation, but Minneapolis and Minnesota, we pay a lot of taxes, but we also have a lot of services, a lot of civil support services there. I'm amazed, most of the country doesn't live here because, it's not that it's easy and we're all giving away entitlements. No, it's just we have some generosity here in this system. It's not totally a zombie system. We have some generosity here that's just quite amazing, and it is a system. It is a big system. The COC, the HUD, the state organizations, it's all a system, and most systems were built to oppress people. Most systems, if it's a system, was kind of like built by older, white men who owned property and owned slaves. That's the system that we were built on, and that's the main problem, the main cause of homelessness in this country is white supremacy through Native American genocide and through slavery and through just horrific behavior that was sort of allowed to happen. It was promoted. It was monetized. The North States had insurance claims on the cargo ships of the people. And so I want to really humanize everything that we're doing by saying, one person housed is a victory. 1,000 people housed is miraculous, and so the numbers and the data points, we have to see the stories in those numbers. And that, what, my roommate just passed away today. We just found his body, but and I'm sorry, but he died housed. He was in an apartment, and it's my second roommate in 5 months in my building, but there's no happiness, but there's a sort of a dim satisfaction, a dim sort of a benefit that, what, this person was in an apartment. They were in an apartment. They were housed. I saw them every now and then, and people overdose. People go back to behaviors. People on a regular basis, on a daily basis, we're losing thousands and thousands of people, but we're saving and redeeming and rehousing people by the thousands as well. So those are the stories that I want to talk about. Like, hey, this isn't just all death and crime and drama. This is also success.
Another example lived experience. My brother has lived outdoors in his car for 30 years. And, my mother is a person of means, and she would buy him condos, and it just would never work out. He'd stay in the and it's like what I understood about my brother. He's just not a person, because of whatever his mental makeup is, that can live close to other people. He just can't live in an apartment building or a condo building. The people are too close. And when my mother died and my brother moved into our house for about 12 or 13 years, he was a changed person. And what happened is, we had my representative where I live approach me about, I have this constituent and we can't get him housed, and there's all this stuff that's going on. And I just listened to the story. I said, he's one of those people that just can't live close to other people, because they put him in different apartments and it didn't work out. And it's like, yeah, you have to somehow find some sort of situation where he can live like in a single family home, or live in some place where he doesn't have to be close to people.
You see that with people have done time for a lot, and you see it in the indigenous community, because culture, the nature and the creator is part of your culture. And I know a story of, a large nonprofit built a 4-unit building up in Yellowknife, and nobody would go in because they never asked them. They never got their input. And here, Hennepin County is asking you guys, and they're changing their, systems and their shelters and their programs.
Yeah, and I also really I work with a gentleman that works here at the library, Caleb, and Caleb. I like the idea of they have social workers that just hang out in the libraries, because that's a place where you're gonna find it's like you're meeting them on their own ground, not like on your ground. Like, come down to this building and take a number and do all this. This not gonna ever work.
The services are right here. Even on the desktop back here, there's streets to housing brochures, pamphlets, literature right here in this room. And I for a minute sat down. I was like, oh great, this is perfect. And so meeting people where they're at, giving them what they need or what they would like. How can I help you? What do you need? What do you want? What's going on? Don't just grab a person and call them into an apartment. I remember my first time in an apartment after being homeless for 13 years. I was all alone in a big house, and there was quiet, and it was so quiet. I was like, oh my gosh, I miss my people. I miss the chaos of the shelter. I miss the food line. I miss the beds, the bunks. It takes a while to decompress after years and generations of whatever.
What would you say to other service providers, politicians, whoever, stakeholders about them empowering their lived experience committees to actually have influence instead of just talking?
I think helping people understand how effective it is to have people with lived experience, and really listen to what they say, because they have the answers. They have the solutions. They understand the problem way better than any of you ever will. I don't care how many degrees you have. I don't care, you have a PhD and blah, blah, blah. You're not going to understand the problem the way that we do. And I think that ultimately, I think in their heart of hearts, people want to be effective. They just don't always know how. And so I'm actually trying to get together research about how well, the effects of lived experience, qualitative, quantitative, that sort of thing, because to help people just understand it really works. This isn't like, some window dressing. This really works. And so if you want something that really works, this is what you need to do.
I only know of United Kingdom, where it's really integrated right into the hiring practice, and a organization in San Jose called Destination Home. It's the only one that I know that has empowered lived experience community like Hennepin County has empowered you back. And what would you say?
I would say what I've been saying for a long time, well, for a little while, is what are we doing here? Why are we having this meeting? What are we doing? What is the action plan? What is the work plan? What are the steps that we need to take to get that solution? Someone comes to the same meeting every other week, talking about the same problems or the same challenges over and over and over and over again, and we keep going around the merry-go-round with talking about the problem. I want to talk about the solutions. What are they? How do we do it? How do we get it done? What are the steps? What's the work plan? Like, give me some actuarial information and let's go do it. Let's go kick some butt. Let's go knock some doors down. Let's go, we're going to go until it's done.
Yeah. One more question. What's the structure? Like, how often do you meet? I know that you have a representative that works directly with you guys, that's, a county employee, but what is the structure of the committee and the hierarchy of how you exchange information?
Well, we do meet once a month, but that's mostly for the committee members to talk to each other. But Eric is kind of a conduit so that people that are hiring people in sustainable housing, people that have RFPs in sustainable housing, any kind of project that goes on, I've been involved in a wide variety of things. They contact Eric, and then Eric puts it out to us. And so each of us have a lot of flexibility and freedom to take on projects that make sense to us or we feel we contribute to, that sort of thing. So I think the fact that it's very loose and doesn't have a lot of structure is part of what makes it work, because then people can really match up to what their heart is telling them, instead of just like, oh yeah, we have this blah, blah, blah. And so I think that the looseness of it, I think, is really helpful. But it's also that the county has let other people know that work in this area that this is a value that we have, and this is a resource that's available to you.
And Eric, I know, but Eric, for the people watching, what's your title, Eric?
The Communications and Community Engagement Coordinator.
I consider Eric my supervisor, and he is. He helps lead and guide the boat in a general way. And Hennepin County has given us authority and flexibility, and they've said we want you to build it how you want it situated and managed and stuff like that under certain rules and guidelines, because we still have to pay taxes, and we still have to submit invoices, and we still have to be 1099 contractors and have a bank account. And so their structure is, to me, right. I thrive in structure. I was in jail, and for, it's that jail, that structure, that tell me what to do. Not that I can't do stuff on my own, but it's some of that is traumatic and just stuff that we've lived with and habitualized. Like I don't like just following the crowd, but I like having a list of to-dos and to-don'ts and stuff like that. So
Well, there is an example of a city that gave the lived experience committee complete control and a lot of money, and it imploded.
yeah.
So the coordination with the county
Yep.
is vital. That's the key.
Integrity and accountability are super important to me because I've screwed up most of my life. I mean, I couldn't manage a one-car parade, and I never kept a dollar past sunset. So, thank you, Rolling Stones. It's just I don't want to be habitual like that anymore. I want to be as much professional development as I possibly can, as much blood I can squeeze out of this turnip.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the kind of the delicate balances is this balance between letting people do the things they need to do and say the things they need to say and having a certain structure to it. And I think there's really in people's hearts, at least the people that I've worked with through my work the last year and a half with the committee, is that they really want this to happen. I feel like I work with people that really care about the results. And I think that is important too, but it's this balance. You have to have the balance between controlling and not controlling, you know what I mean? So that the person who of lived experience can speak their mind, but it also goes to an audience that can hear them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah.
Are you guys compensated for your time?
Yes, we are. We are compensated, and it's not just like a piecemeal thing. It's quite a, it's quite a good compensation.
Hour by hour,
Yeah.
what's going to happen.
Well, they have to be careful because many people are on disability, right? Give you too much,
Yep.
then we're disability.
You make it even more difficult for us to help you because now we have to file taxes and 1099s but Hennepin County and I think maybe the state of Minnesota, they changed the law on some of that compensation that doesn't count against you regarding your housing.
Awesome.
Because it used to be like I'm in permanent supportive housing. I can't make more than $50 a month in cash, and then they'll kick me out or I have to pay. And so then now it's been changed.
Part of how Hennepin County can be the way it is, and they're very special in the way they are. But I also feel that statewide, there is just an openness to the idea of lived experience and the idea of, justice. And that people are understanding it's been an unjust system.
We're talking about the continuum of care, which is mandated, and everybody in that meeting is paid.
Yeah.
Except for the 2 lived experience. HUD said you got to have 2 lived experience, but they don't say you should compensate them.
We are compensated with financially and more so the professional development is to me worth more than money can buy. I was at the National Alliance to End Homelessness, NAEH, their committee. They offered to give me a scholarship 2 years in a row now for like several days. So it was a major lucrative scholarship, free hotel room, free airfare. I mean, they paid for the airfare, they paid for the hotel room, and I went and enjoyed the conference. This year, for the 3rd year in a row, I'm going as a volunteer. I gained a lot of connections nationwide and organizationally, how to do things differently by seeing what New Mexico is doing to end homelessness. They ended chronic homelessness for their veterans. They built a tiny house village. I've seen harm reduction clinics and all these ideas and connections and connectivity and professional development, being in the meetings, waking up on time, going to these, running around to these workshops, the conference, and then also in Washington, D.C., meeting with Senator Tina Smith, Ilhan Omar, Amy Klobuchar. So meeting and connecting and sort of rubbing elbows with people. Like I would never go to Washington, D.C. I can barely, like I said, I can barely handle a one-car parade in Minneapolis. Yet, so that's just that whole connections. And what I'm giving back is again, my story of success, of sobriety, of being housed. Like it changes the dynamics of your DNA for generations.
I was just going to say one more thing because we were talking about this. There's an organization called Community Access. It was started by Howie the Harp, which is a homeless person that was an advocate that, obviously played the harp and was busking. And, he is a very huge mental health advocate. And Community Access in their DNA, the whole organization is 51% peers. Now, it's not, we're talking specific homelessness, right? Their mental health, lots of different things where peers fit in. But I think it's really interesting, and it fits our conversation, is community access to, mandate that we're going to be mostly driven by people with lived experience. Folks don't necessarily work 9 to 5. They might not know how to fill out a job application or fill out some kind of report or what an HMIS, put data in, or spreadsheets or all this other stuff. So they had to be really flexible on their hiring process. And the one person that I know that works there is one of the people with severe mental illness who actually became a PhD, but she's never the person you could put in a box, right? She's never a 9 to 5 person and still isn't, but they allowed her to thrive. And I think that's important when you're doing a community, a lived experience committee, is that you have to leave some flexibility because you're dealing with people that may not have an education. Now, they got street smarts, but they might not have, a formal education, and they all are experiencing some kind of trauma.
Yeah.
I think it's very true, and I think that it's a key value that we should and do hold as a lived experience group.
Last words? Gratitude. Always gratitude. I didn't get here on my own. I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, my relatives. I stand on the shoulders of my roommates who passed away, people who in the shelter, people who are still outside. Just gratitude.
Yeah, I would. It's funny. I was thinking I taught in a school where 98% of my students were homeless or in transitional housing. It was a targeted charter school. And this one girl, I just thought about her as I drove up here. She was like, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky. And I love that a child that has no place to live, that we all think, has a horrible life, she's so lucky. And I think you have to kind of grasp every single one of those moments you can where you know how lucky you are. And I just, like I said, I think about my boyfriend's parents every week. It's been 50 years. I think about them every week because I think their kindness saved my life. And so I think you have to kind of reach back to every part of your life and really appreciate those moments when you've been blessed. And, I've been sober 46 years now. And, it's sort of like,
Congratulations.
like really, it just feels really unreal. And so you just gratitude for those things every day.
Well, thank you guys for spending some time with me.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.